So what does it actually take to live a good life? It's a question we all ask ourselves, right? Well, today, we're going to unpack a source text that lays out a complete Christian roadmap for morality. We're going to trace its logic from like the highest possible level, the nature of God, all the way down to the choices you and I make every single day.
And we're going to start with the biggest question of all. What does it really mean to be good? You know, it's a fundamental human puzzle, and the framework we're exploring today offers a very specific, very structured answer.
But here's the thing. Instead of just giving us a list of do's and don'ts, this framework really pushes us to go deeper. It argues that to understand how to be good, we first have to grapple with the very source of goodness itself. We've got to start at the top.
And that brings us to our first section, the divine moral standard. I want you to think of this as the theological bedrock for everything that follows. Getting this part right is absolutely crucial.
Okay, so this brings up a classic, kind of mind-bending problem, right? If God already knows everything that's going to happen, how can our choices possibly be free? It feels like a paradox, but the text offers a really fascinating solution. It basically says, look, God knowing what you'll do doesn't cause you to do it. It just means that your free choices are part of the future that He already knows. In other words, He foresees the very free decisions we were always going to make.
Well, you know what's coming next, don't you? This leads straight to that massive philosophical question, the classic problem of evil. If the source of all morality is an all-good, all-powerful God, then where in the world does evil come from?
The text looks at three common explanations, and, well, rejects all of them. First, there's predestination, which says God plans everything, including evil. But that just makes God responsible for sin and makes our choices meaningless. Then there's the idea that evil is just an illusion. The text says, no way. Evil is a very real, very destructive force. And finally, there's simple dualism, this idea of God and a devil in an endless battle. The text just doesn't find that convincing.
So in the end, the text comes full circle, right back to that foundational idea. It argues that evil is the necessary shadow of freedom. Think about it. The ability to genuinely choose good absolutely requires the possibility of choosing evil. Without that real choice, a meaningful moral life couldn't even exist.
Okay, so that sets the stage. Now we can move from that divine foundation to our role in all this. Welcome to Section 2, Humanity's Purpose. If that's the setup, then what's our blueprint for actually living a moral life?
The first tool we're given is our conscience, and I love the analogy the text uses here. It calls it a manufacturer's instruction manual. It's presented as this built-in guide from our Creator on how to live right, so we don't end up damaging our spiritual lives through misuse.
According to this text, a good life is a life that functions well. It's a simple but powerful idea. Just like a good engine does what it's supposed to do, a good person fulfills their purpose. And the way we do that is by intentionally practicing and developing specific qualities, or as they're called, virtues.
And here they are, the 8 cardinal virtues laid out in the text. You can think of them as the ultimate toolkit for building a good character. You've got temperance to manage pleasure and courage to face pain. Wisdom is there to guide our reason, while beneficence and justice are all about how we treat others. It's a really complete map for moral development.
Now, among these 8, the text elevates 2 as supreme, wisdom and love. It argues that true wisdom, seeing the universe correctly, is actually found in the love of God. And love, well, love is what pulls us out of our own selfishness, with its highest expression also being the love of God. You see how they're connected? They totally fuel each other.
So, we have the virtues, but what do they actually look like in the real world? How do they play out? That brings us to Section 3, where we see these ethics get applied to some core social institutions, from marriage to money.
According to this text, marriage isn't just one thing. It has 3 main purposes. First, the creation and nurturing of a family. Second, the mutual help and companionship between the partners. And third, providing a proper and healthy context for sexuality.
And because of this really high view of marriage, seeing it as this lifelong sacramental union, the source text describes divorce as an evil. It's viewed as something that harms children and violates that sacred bond. And for that reason, it's permitted only in the very specific case of adultery.
Now, shifting gears to the topic of money, the text introduces it with this incredibly provocative quote. I mean, wow. This isn't just a gentle suggestion to be charitable. This is a radical reframing of ownership, basically arguing that our surplus stuff, It isn't really ours. It belongs to those who need it. So the text presents this dual view of money. On one hand, yeah, it's an essential tool for life, and it can be used for immense good. But on the other hand, it's a super dangerous idol. And the source is crystal clear. It isn't money itself that's the problem. It's the love of money that's the root of all evil, because it threatens to become the only thing we live for.
All right, in our final section, we're going to see how this whole framework confronts some really complex personal and social vices. This is where the system gets tested against messy, real-world problems like ambition, gambling, and yes, racism.
The text argues that ambition itself isn't good or bad, it's neutral. Its moral character depends entirely on what's driving it. Good ambition, that drives you to develop your talents to serve other people. But bad ambition is purely for selfish gain, and it leads to all the nasty stuff: jealousy, envy, and the abuse of power.
And when it comes to gambling, the text's critique is really multi-layered. It argues the core problem isn't just the risk involved. It's the very nature of the act itself. It's about seeking gain without creating any value. It requires someone else to lose for you to win, and it works against that inner peace and contentment we're supposed to be cultivating.
On the issue of racism, the text is completely unambiguous. It actually calls it a moral heresy. The theological argument is simple but powerful. If everyone is one in Christ, as St. Paul declares, then there can be no fundamental distinction between races. It means that racial prejudice is a direct contradiction of a core belief of the faith.
So, wow, we've journeyed from the nature of God, down through human virtues, all the way to social ethics. We've built this entire system piece by piece. So what does it all point to? What's the one single unifying principle that holds this whole thing together?
Well, the source text concludes that the entire vast system can be boiled down to this one famous quote from Jesus. These two commands, love God and love your neighbor, they aren't just presented as a couple more rules, they're the final summary of the entire ethical framework.
And that, right there, is the ultimate takeaway. This entire ethical roadmap suggests that every single choice we make, every virtue we practice, every social issue we tackle, it's all meant to be an expression of this one thing: love. It's the engine, it's the goal, and it's the final measure of a truly good life.